Hey everyone, it's Cal from Dirty Weasel. At the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase on May 12th, we got to see our first in-depth glimpse at Starfield. Just for clarity's sake, the B-roll as seen here in the background is an edited version of that footage. If you haven't seen the full presentation, I encourage you to do so and will provide a link to the Bethesda YouTube channel in the description below. After reviewing it multiple times, I have some thoughts and many questions. In an effort to let things settle out after the presentation, I waited to write this video in case any new information emerged, and I'm glad I waited. This video will present what we know so far, including answers from Bethesda and from Todd Howard himself, and add some of my personal impressions. While watching the presentation live, I went in with a heavy dose of skepticism after my disappointment in Fallout 4 and the debacle that was Fallout 76. Let me start with general impressions. If there's anything that Bethesda does well, it's world building. In the Elder Scrolls and Fallout franchises, they present unique takes on classic fantasy and post-apocalyptic tropes, filled with deep lore and attention to detail in the worlds they create. Starfield is their first attempt at true science fiction. I was very interested to see how they would approach it. Would it be the sci-fi fantasy of Star Wars, or the ultra-futuristic vision of the original Star Trek? I was actually struck with the near-future vibe while looking at Starfield. It's as if we're looking at a world that actually could be in the next 300 years, as stated in the video of being Sol date 2330. Looking at the weapons, armor, ships, and buildings, it's like Bethesda was designing a world that could realistically happen. Everything just has a feel that it could exist without a giant leap in technology or some future alien influence, as is common with most science fiction. It's almost as if the team at Bethesda Game Studios hung out with guys at NASA while making the game. All the dials, switches, readouts just have an attention to detail that really appeals to techno geeks like me. Everything just looks like it has a function and has a realistic evolution to how they came into being. This is not a world fashioned like Star Wars or Star Trek. Think of it more like the television series The Expanse. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Less sci-fi fantasy, more sci-fi fact. Among many of the questions I had that were not answered in the presentation was, what am I playing as a character? Basically, are we going to get a voiced or unvoiced protagonist? Thankfully, Bethesda addressed this rather quickly. In a Twitter post dated June 13th, they state, yes, dialogue in Starfield is first person, and your character does not have a voice. While I am in favor of this going back to the roots of the Bethesda RPGs, I know that opinions differ. Going unvoiced means that more dialogue options become available, and we can even see the return of skill checks in those conversations. As the dialogue scenes being in first person only, I think a better option is available, but I'll leave that to the video I'm preparing about Starfield modding possibilities. Which gives us a natural segue to a very important question. Will there be modding? We already know that Starfield is built on the latest generation of Bethesda's in-house creation engine. So based on that alone, we know modding is very possible. In an article by IGN, they had an interview with Todd Howard published after the presentation. There's lots of interesting tidbits there, but I'll only touch on a few. So I'll include a link to the article in the description below. Regarding modding, Todd Howard states in the interview, quote, "We love our modding community. We actually think this game for our modding community is going to be a dream, as there's so much they could do." That's pretty cut and dry. He does not touch on when the modding tools known as the Creation Kit specifically for Starfield will be available to modders after release of the game. Much was made in the presentation about how expansive Starfield is, with Todd Howard even boasting about 1,000 explorable worlds. How big are we talking here? Well, in the interview, Todd Howard states that Starfield is about 20% bigger than Skyrim or Fallout 4, and that the main quest would take approximately 30 to 40 hours, compared to about the mid-20s for those previous two games. Also, at the time of the presentation, they were at over 200,000 lines of dialogue. About those 1,000 explorable worlds, keep in mind that in the vastness of space, very few planets can be landed on, much less habitable. It is explained in the article that Bethesda is using a combination of procedural generation along with handcrafted content for those worlds. Procedural generation is not new for Bethesda, as it has been used in their games as far back as Daggerfall, but never on this scale. A large portion of the footage was centered on Starship gameplay, and I was greatly encouraged to see that we will be able to build or modify our own ships. However, while we were given some footage of Starship combat, questions remain in my mind. There have been unconfirmed leaks that it has been this flight and combat system that has been giving the team at Bethesda the biggest headaches. It is not a stretch to say that much of what was seen in the presentation and discussed in the interview with Todd Howard would be all new to the dev team and straining the redesigned creation engine. I think it is likely that these new mechanics may have been a big factor in the decision to delay Starfield for an additional 6 months or so, and I've discussed what may have led to that decision for this delay and who was involved in it in a previous video. Overall, as Todd said in this presentation, this is easily their most ambitious game ever, and this is the biggest question we may have. Can they deliver on this ambition? Here's where I think that Microsoft's influence as the new owner of Bethesda Game Studios will be felt the greatest. While Phil Spencer, the Microsoft Game Studios CEO, is respected and possibly even loved in the video games industry, he is a realist and knows that a lot is riding on Starfield, and he has at his disposal a heap of cash to let work continue on Starfield until it meets his and our satisfaction. While some critics have already proclaimed it as just being Fallout in space or No Man's Skyrim, I'm willing to give it a chance based solely on its immense potential to be a great game. But I will be critical where appropriate and praise it if it meets that potential. I will be making more Starfield news videos in the future if any new answers become available to our many other questions. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and share it with others. Also, please subscribe to us here at Dirty Weasel Media. I would greatly appreciate it. My name is Cal, I'm from Dirty Weasel, and I'm signing off.